So in the recognition in the 58.6 of what is there to be challenged, what authority is to be challenged, that the next step in the wheel is this 38th gate of opposition, the gate of the fighter. The gate of the fighter in the channel of struggle. Life is struggle. It's inherent in life. The 28th gate, the harmonic gate at the other end of the channel, is the only gate that carries within it the fear of death. The 38th gate fights in its life, struggles through life, because life is a struggle. However, to struggle in life can be a terrible thing if the struggle is not of value. And of course, this is the secret of this whole channel. It is one of the secrets of life, is to come to grips with one's purpose and value in this life. You cannot meet your purpose until you meet yourself. It's not possible. And you cannot find value in your nature until you're interacting as yourself, because nothing else you can trust. What you think about yourself, what others think about you, is the not self in the conditioned emotional environment. Does not mean that that is you. So the 38th gate of opposition is the right angle cross of tension. 38, 39, 48, 21. The ability to preserve individual integrity through opposition to detrimental forces. Do you notice the similarity in language here? You know, by the time we got to the 58.6, we saw this need for the individual to maintain its integrity regardless of the stimulation, and to be able to really see where to put their energy. And here you have that individual integrity through opposition to influence. Don't get caught up in thinking that they have to fight with somebody else. They do, eh? But that's simply a byproduct. The first line, qualification. Tempering opposition based on the circumstances. I mean, this is the foundation of struggle. How you struggle and the intensity of your struggle has to be determined by the circumstances. You know, you can look very, 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 very foolish, you know, to struggle in an intense way in circumstances that don't call for that. You really look mad. Neptune exalted, we know right away if you have Neptune in the lower trigram, in the first line, in the foundation of the hexagram. I mean, after all, first line structure is introspection, and here you have Neptune, and there's no way to look in. A psychic attunement that guarantees proper action. Don't look in, you'll be psychic. Look in, you'll look crazy. You know, in other words, that the capacity to know when the circumstances are correct and how to judge what intensity of struggle is necessary is a question of intuition. It's just a matter of intuition. You can't look in and decide that for yourself. You have to allow it to come out naturally. Politeness, the second line. My daughter. You know, my children all have this. You know, when you meet somebody who struggles with you politely, Jesus. Think about the 38 too. This is the hermit fighter. They're hiding away so that they won't have to struggle. They're hiding away so that they don't have to meet anything that will try to influence them. The politeness simply comes out of the surprise as well. Eh? They don't know there's anything at the other end. Opposition that does not transgress normal codes of behavior. which suggests, by the way, that the first line can. In other words, that the struggle can be blown out of proportion, as we saw in the line. In the second line here, they don't want to get into anybody else's struggle. I mean, they don't want to get into this whole business of fighting other people off. So when you bang on their window, instead of screaming in your face, they look at you very nicely, they smile, and they say, "Would you go away, please?" Politely. What they think about you underneath, now that's another story. But the way they deal with you is that they don't transgress. You can always see second lines as being naive. Naive in the sense that their experience in the world is limited because they're hermits. So they don't really grasp what the other can possibly be and are often surprised by all that. Pluto exalted the value of discretion, the energy for the intuitive awareness for discretion. The pressure to be discreet. So you don't waste your energy in struggles that are not for you. The detriment. An over-politeness that is both servile and obviously superficial that defeats its very purpose. That is the energy for over-politeness in times of struggle. Now this can annoy people. Why don't you just get angry? You want classic confrontation? 38-2 with somebody who doesn't have the 38. And the person who doesn't have the 38 is howling at the 38-2 to get angry. The 38-2 has put all of its anger in the other one, and the other one is howling in its face to get angry. And it's going, "Why are you so upset?" And the other one is going nuts, right? It's going, "You should really calm down. Can I get you some Valiums now? Is everything..." One of the things that is forgotten by people who know human design is that you become so conscious of the other that you forget about your own power. Never forget. Look at your chart and see what you put into everybody else. Please see that. And whatever you put into someone else, you can get back very strongly because they may be open there and you get that whole wave back. I'm a 51-25. That is a channel of competitiveness, of the need to be first. Somebody comes up to me and says, "I don't like human design." Now, if I get into an argument with that person, they're going to take my 51-25 energy and they're going to throw it back in my face. They're going to be twice as competitive as me riding on my energy. Their ego is going to be bigger than mine. And I'm going to have to deal with it. So what I do in those moments when they say, "I don't like it," I say, "Good, that's nice. I don't care." Because I'm not going to give them access to my energy to turn it on myself. Be clear about that. Who you are, you put into the other. The 38-2 is polite as a strategy. That doesn't mean they think nicely of you. And what is underneath may come out. They may be emotional, they may be this or that. It may come out, go directly into the other person, and you get that back in your face. A lot of 28-38s get beat up in life. They just do. And not because they're looking for a fight. Because somebody else who takes that energy in gets conditioned to want to fight and struggle. You have to be careful. The third line. Alliance. The ability to sustain through integration with similar forces, thus ensuring the vitality to persevere. The energy to interact with others in times of struggle. Now that sounds great, but it's still a third line. And it's still bonds made and broken. And what endures is only temporary. In that sense, by banging into the other, the advantage is discovered that there may be, remember individuals, that there may be someone who can help you empower. There may be. This is a very important learning process. But there is only sustainment here for the three through the integration. And because they don't know the other well, it doesn't necessarily work out that way. It may at the end of their process, as they mature. The earth in detriment, and of course this is a sun-earth line, so in terms of crosses, this is going to fix those specific crosses here. The earth in detriment, selfish alliance which saps the energy of one's partners in order to ensure personal vitality. The energy to selfishly use others in times of struggle. You know, you bang into them and you realize they can be of advantage. You use them and break your bond and go along your way. And there are people who think, oh, that's terrible. And my little Johnny's like that? Yes, well, he is. The 38, this pressure to know that life is of value, isn't going to be concerned that it takes advantage of somebody else being around to try to get to or get through its struggle. It just doesn't. And it's not its fault. It's just simply the way it is. It is individual. It doesn't really hear or listen to the needs of others in that situation because that's not what it's about. It is there to accomplish its own struggle and can see it's possible that others may be of value. But after the struggle, you don't want them around in your life. And you'll leave them. Bonds made and broken. The upper trigram here is the advantage of knowing that your energy can actually be conditioned by awareness. You know, it's so important to see that these root gates pointed towards the spleen. You know, when you get to the upper trigram, when you get to the transpersonal capacity, is the recognition that awareness can guide you. You know, that is very, very important. It means that the 4th through 6th lines here, what they're working with is that they're working with different kinds of potential awareness in order to be able to fulfill their struggle. The 28th gate is the beginning of the intuitive process. The pressure of the 38 forces intuition. Empowers, in that sense, the intuitive process. And we have the 4th line of investigation, analysis which strengthens opposition. And here you get to transpersonal skills. The analysis is not about your struggle. The analysis is about the other. Which other, which awareness can make my struggle of value for me? What risk will fulfill my need to know that life is of value? Pluto exalted, the detective who develops, or the insider who accepts a joint opposition whose success can only be based on trust. The energy to recognize who can be of value in times of struggle. Who can be of value? Mars in detriment, the aggressiveness in opposition that prejudices investigation and limits trustworthiness. The energy to selfishly use others in times of struggle. The power of adrenaline to provoke aggressiveness. When you're dealing with externalizing, and you're dealing with externalizing struggle, what happens here in this capacity of recognizing the other is that the detriment here doesn't like the other. I mean, it knows that the other may be able to be of value to it, but it doesn't like the other. Out of that comes the aggressiveness. By the way, these are not aggressive people in that sense. They're externalizing the capacity to struggle. So it looks like that. I mean, they can be very, very sweet, nice beings in there somewhere, and it looks like they're Attila the Hun. Because they're here to externalize the pressure to struggle. So what happens is that when they find the right kind of risk, that very being that will bring that to them, they empower with this pressure to struggle, and they struggle with each other. Oh, it's tough for individuals to be dependent on anybody in any way for anything. It just is. That's their genetics. Don't influence me. Don't care about me. Don't try to tell me what to do. Don't look after me. Just allow me to be an example for you. When you get to the last 7 minutes and 30 seconds of this fourth line, the cross changes and the 21 and the 48 become the 51, 57. You have the juxtaposition cross of opposition. 38, 39, 57, 51. It's interesting that what happens here in this fourth line is that in the right angle cross, the fourth line is still carrying the 21 and the 48. It's carrying this control and the depth. But when you get into the left angle, you get to the juxtaposition first, the cross of opposition, then you get shock. And then you get the intuition that belongs to the 38, that is the 57. That is the expression of the intuition and the splenic towards expression. In other words, their opposition can be much more shocking and penetrating. They're fixed in that. They are fixed in their struggle with you, and they are fixed in their struggle with others. And their way of struggling is through shock. So they can be very surprising. Remember, we're dealing with a fourth line opportunist. And remember that the behavior of the opportunist, that behavior is going to be conditioned by circumstances. The circumstances of the opportunity when it arises. So you can go along with somebody and you think you have a smooth, easy relationship with them. And all of a sudden, wham! Out jumps that opportunistic behavior and out jumps the shocking opposition. You know, you've been discussing politics with your partner before the election, and you both agree in your conversations together that you're going to vote for the same person. And when your partner comes back that night after voting, you know, they shock you by telling you that they voted for somebody else. And starts a whole struggle. Comes out of nowhere. It's a value to them to shock you with their struggle. The left angle cross is called the left angle cross of individualism. These are weirdos. 38, 39, 57, 51. Pure individuals. Pure individuality in the cross. Based on provocation and opposition and shock. So don't expect them to be like anything you can imagine you would want them to be like. Don't get in their way. Don't interfere with them. Don't tell them what time it is. Don't tell them that the sun's up. Don't tell them that the mountains are beautiful. Alienation, the fifth line. A stage in opposition when one is totally isolated. This is the basis of this cross. True individuals. Saturn exalted the ambition and concentration to endure, the energy to stubbornly fight alone. And they will. And don't get in their way. The secret, like any fifth line, is to recognize that there will be a moment of crisis. There will be a moment when their individualism is of enormous value. However, they're always going to be the subject of projection on that individualism. Saturn exalted the ambition and concentration to endure. That's one side. The other side, detriment, alienation, experience this painful confinement that by its very nature blinds one to the possibility that there are those at some point who may come to one's aid. The energy for stubbornness is so strong that it's difficult to recognize that there are others who can help in times of struggle. You know, they're pure individuals, and you see that they're stuck in a sinkhole, and you know that they're not going to get out themselves, and you're standing there with your hand out, and they're saying to you, go away, I can do it myself, as they sink deeper and deeper and deeper into the sinkhole. When it's above their chin, and they're about to die, then maybe they'll let you pull them out. They can be very interesting beings. They will have in the early part of its life. This whole business of recognizing that alliance is something that seems to be possible. Remember that the third line doesn't really know the other. So in banging into the other, there's all these possibilities that arise that it says maybe with the other it's possible. So difficult for the individual. Maybe I should listen to the other. Maybe. Deaf. Right? Misunderstanding. Opposition without basis. Now think about that. This is the ultimate expression of individuality. There is my way, there is no other way. I either know or I don't know, but I don't want to know what you know. I can't hear it anyway. I'm too involved in being stubborn. And they get up onto their hill and they say in their melancholy that there is nothing in the struggle that makes things of value for them, and that they feel terrible, and that they want everybody to leave them alone because they know that life is useless. At the same time, they can't help but watch what goes on around them. They can't help but see that it appears that some people have value in their lives, and so forth and so on. Saturn exalted eventual crystallization which clears up misunderstandings, the energy which attracts misunderstanding, and the stubbornness to face opposition. These people are always getting into problems of being misunderstood by the other. Why are you so damn stubborn? They will say. Can't you see you're wrong? And of course they don't hear you. The earth and detriment, the recognition that misunderstanding is at the root of opposition, but the insistence that it is the misunderstanding of the opposing forces. Where misunderstanding is at the root of struggle, the energy of stubbornness to insist and maintain one's position. You cannot give up the struggle. And the 38-6 can never give up the struggle. They struggle not to struggle. You know, they climb up on their hill thinking that they won't have to struggle anymore, only to discover that they still have to struggle. And they will always be in that process until their life is of value to them. And remember that the 38th gate is not an awareness. It's a stress It's the stress that builds when life isn't of value. It's the pressure that builds when life isn't of value. It's that stress and pressure that's expressed in their capacity to struggle. And it is their stubbornness, as long as it stays. When you meet an individual who gives up that stubbornness, you know they're dying. You know, this stubbornness, this need to struggle for the value, it must remain. You can't find it until you live out your nature. You can't find it until you're living out your definition and your type and your authority. And if you're an individual, you can't find it until you're clear about the chemistry of melancholy. Because otherwise it will distort your perception. To be up on that hill in the chemistry of melancholy and to become sad, if that sadness, if you do not understand what it is for, that it's for you to have the creative environment, the creative opportunity to see what could be worth struggling for. To be involved in the depth of that struggle, in that sadness, in its creative field. And to recognize as an individual that to externalize this capacity to fight, that you can only do that when you're in the mood. That you can only do that when you're in the happy stage of your chemistry, the productive stage. If you fight when you're sad, victory is going to be very difficult. In understanding yourself, in being able to live out your own nature, then you can come to these points in our process where we do have clarity. I mean, real clarity about ourselves, about our lives. And of course, the 38th gate must remain stubborn until life is of value. Always keep in mind that channels can be seen in their polarity, that struggle can be eliminated. That is, the struggle for the value of life can be eliminated. This is real transcendence, the moment that any 38 can see that its energy, once applied, brings it a sense of purpose and value in its life. So at the end of this process, when you get to the top here and you look out over all of the struggles that are possible, and you see clearly that it doesn't matter whether your life is full of misunderstanding, as long as you hold on to that struggle so that you can finally see that life is of value. That real value is leading to ambition and leading to a gate of special magic in the 54, leading to the material plane. It's one of those things to see that the struggle for value in life has a clear and deep association to our material well-being. A 28-38 is going to struggle much more if they have limited resources, and are going to suffer much more if they have limited resources than the 28-38 that has abundance. In that abundance, the value of life is easier to recognize. It's just easier. You know, if you have enough to eat, you're not going to have to struggle for your food. But if you don't have enough to eat, your whole life may be about struggling for food. And that may be the only thing that's of value. And the larger context of value for you in your own life may be lost. So this movement here, to move from the 38 to the 54, again brings us back to the importance of what the tribe and tribal circuitry is here for in our process. We must have a secure material foundation. This is not about taking a vow of poverty. Somebody always has to support that. This is about all of us recognizing that in order for communities, societies, and civilizations to flourish, that there must be general well-being and general material wealth. It is clear to me that unless every tribe can have its own land, its own homes, its schools, can have the right to education and have the right to work, unless we have that, we have no peace in the world ever, because that's the basis. So one of the things to recognize about the nature of struggle is if you meet a really messed up 38 who's so lost in trying to see that their life is of value and is stuck on some kind of mystical, spiritual boo-bah trip, tell them to get a job. Tell them to go to work. Tell them to enter into the material plane, to see their value in society, to see how productive they are in society, to take that wonderful energy and put it to work in that struggle. Because when they can provide for themselves, and when they struggle to provide for themselves, they save themselves from a lot of psychic grief. You know, it's one of those things to remember that the 9 teaches us that each step can be its own reward. And in finding value in life, it's always going to point us away from the philosophical and back to the basic. That the first struggle is the struggle on the material plane. And when you've accomplished that, then you lay a foundation for what may be more sophisticated, more spiritual, or more mystical values in your process.